Because it comes up for you
Oh
before it
yeah,
comes up for me.
this
But
meeting is being live streamed. It's working.
yeah, well, according to this, it's still setting things up. There we go. Now what I got to do is mute that. To the mute. Sorry. Mute. There we go. Come back to Zoom. Hey, 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 hey. Okay. Over to you, young man.
Three, two, one. Okay. Ready? In our heads, we'll quietly count down.
Aha.
Okay. Welcome back. Episode something, not sure of the
24,
number.
I think, or 25.
24. Okay. So in the 20s. Um, David and I are thinking we've put a few minutes of planning into this. As often in the case, it's more
No,
about
not even
the
that, Jordan. Not
the,
even
the conversation that emerges. We looked and we found about, what would you say, 7 months ago,
yeah.
we posted a recording on, we live streamed um, on artificial intelligence and conversational leadership together. And yesterday, what was that? Tax day in the US, so April
Oh,
15th.
really? Okay.
Yeah, it was tax day yesterday. We ran a knowledge cafe, and I think seemed to go pretty well. So we thought today we would follow up on both of those, yesterday's cafe and what we're taking away from that, and 7 months ago, where is our thinking and our experience gone with this Venn diagram of artificial intelligence and conversational leadership? If that's the context, do you want me to add a little more content, David, or do you want to jump in with some content first? How should we start?
I'll say something. Again, this really is off the cuff, so to speak. At the moment, I've got nothing in my head. I've got no idea what I'm going to say. And this is the
Okay.
interesting thing about conversation, isn't it? Is that I know that once we get into it, it will blossom in some way. But at the moment, I've got no idea in what way. And that's, in fact, I said it in the cafe yesterday. I said, um, people aren't in charge of the conversation at all. It's the conversation that's in charge. And you've got no idea where the conversation is going to take you. And
And several people
that's,
really, there were some thumbs up and some positive
oh
comments on
yeah,
on
yeah,
that comment alone.
they, they got that indeed. But yeah, the topic yesterday was conversation in the age of AI. And that's what we spoke about 7 months ago. And for the life of me, I can't remember exactly what we said then. But
Yep.
I'm sure every again, that's the strange thing about this all. Like at the moment, I think back to yesterday or that time ago. I can't remember right now, but as we start to talk, it will emerge.
hmm
Human
And
human
the
brain.
one thing I'm just now realizing as you say this, so it's already happening for me, is yesterday the way we basically did it was approximately, I think I would say approximately, but yours I guess was exactly 9 minutes because it was pre-recorded, nine
Yes,
minutes of content. And then I went about the same, 5, 10 minutes
yes, you
of
did.
content. I hope I kept it that short. And the point I'm trying to make now is we didn't really go back and forth. We weren't really in conversation. It was parallel soliloquies. It was
Yeah, it was.
you offered some content and then I offered some content and then we went into breakouts. So maybe right now is our chance to go back and
To
forth
have a
on some of
proper
those things.
conversation, for God's
Yeah,
sake.
to go to do those. So here, I'll throw some of mine out and then you throw some of yours out
Okay.
because I
Throw
watched
something
your
out on the table, on the metaphoric
the
table.
maybe two or three things because they're short and sweet.
Okay.
My basic framing was strategy and tactics, or I called it philosophy and tactical action, philosophical
Ooh,
shifts
okay.
and tactical actions. That's what I ended up sharing on screen. And I guess over on the philosophy side, there's actually four main points. I'm looking at my little graphic right now, but maybe the
Jeez.
two I'll call out. One was, well, at least what ChatGPT came up with was from faster thinking, I should say it this way, from faster thinking to better thinking.
Okay.
You know this about me. I right away go, just like the hair on my neck goes back up, or I get cringe feelings whenever someone talks about knowledge management and they're actually talking about documents. Um, I get this cringe of conversation when people are talking about just the intellectual thinking. I'm like, yes, like we're gonna think, we're gonna talk, we're gonna make better sense. and we're going to relate and we're going to feel. And even if you're not aware of the feelings, like, fine. Like,
You're reminding me now. That's one of the things you keep coming up with, and every time you say it, I think, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think enough. I don't think enough about that. You always talk about thinking and feeling, and I don't think enough about the feeling. It's there, um, but intellectually, I haven't sort of explored it. But it's something missing in my head right now. But it's so important. It's a massive part of what this is about. Because again, if you're thinking about AI, at least as far as we know, AI doesn't have feelings. Although there's some research that says just that just maybe it might.
and might actually have some. So, okay. So then, that's a little angle we can take. The other language I took, and this was, again, I haven't said this on this live stream yet, is I did 4 or 5 prompts with ChatGPT yesterday. So, it knows all about me and all my stuff. And so in prep
Yeah.
for the cafe, I got into a little bit of a back and forth with it. And I did really appreciate the wording it came up with for this, kind of. My very first philosophical shift that it wrote. It said, conversation is the new operating system. Well, of course, I don't like calling it operating system. I don't
No,
like the,
nor
the
do
very
I.
IT thing, and that's missing all the feeling. But underneath that, the subheading to that one, it says, designing spaces where thinking happens.
Oh yes,
So,
absolutely.
not bad, but for me, I added in 2 other things:
Thinking and feeling.
designing and convening spaces
Ah,
where thinking and feeling happens. And
right.
that
That
is actually a fairly
that I
major,
like.
yeah, yeah.
And it's something I still haven't totally got my head around it all in the sense that I can articulate it the way that I would like. But I've been looking at this work of Rupert Wegeruff in Cambridge, and he talks, is talking about dialogic learning, dialogic education, dialogic thinking, and he talks about dialogic space, this space where conversations can take place. That space is a space, a metaphorical space between us as we're having a conversation, um, and that's an idea that I quite warm to, is seeing it as a space like that.
I just had a
Um,
thought. Um, you
I
call
don't
it
know how that
conversational
relates to the
space.
Japanese bar, by the way.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Um, there's liberating structures,
mm,
those 35
mhm,
tools for,
mm.
just putting a little bit of structure to liberate people. I wonder, you say conversational space, and there's that other person we've talked to that has the same language, but what about just one little tiny idea, conversational structures? I kind of, even as I say it, I don't really like it because I don't want to overstructure. But if you think of it as like liberating structures, where the whole point is to put just a little bit of structure to open up the thinking, I wonder if part of what we are doing is just putting a little bit of understanding to open up the conversation. I don't
Yeah,
know what to
I
call
think I
that.
think we are. I haven't used that term or in my thinking either, conversational structures, but we are. We're not looking to overstructure things. That's
No.
not what we're about. But it's a bit like the cafe. There's a little bit of structure there.
Yeah.
But by the way, you just untouched, and I think the person you were touching on was David White, who's the other
He's one, but
guy.
no, I'm thinking I'm gonna mess up his name. Is it Griffith or
David
Griff?
Griffiths. There
That's
is.
another one, but do you remember the Gestalt guy that talks about conversational spaces? We had a phone call, I think, with him once.
Oh,
I can't remember his name now, but
I can't
he's
remember.
he's drawn some models and some theories that are, I think he literally calls it conversational spaces. I think he
I
does.
suspect they do. Yes, I think I've used that term. But I was just touching on David White. I think I've told you. Although he talks about conversational leadership,
Yeah,
um,
he's a
this is
poet.
kind of interesting. This is a issue I've got. I think it goes back to school. I was never a poet. Never particularly enjoyed poetry. I guess because at school we were forced to memorize the stuff, and if we didn't memorize it, we got punished. I mean,
Hmm.
wonderful way of teaching children. Um,
Hmm.
but because he keeps coming up, whenever I searching or something, up pops David White because he talks and writes about conversational leadership. And I thought, it's about time, however painful it is, that I should sit down and listen to one of his videos. And there's a couple of talks he's got, and I've started to do it. And if I strip away a lot of the verbiage around what he's got to say, there is a heart, there is a core to his teaching that I actually quite like. But he's got a different his stance on conversational leadership. We see leadership as a practice, and we see leadership as something that everybody can step into. He's talking about it from the individual, how individuals lead, if you like, in conversation. So he's actually using it in a very different way, and maybe that's also partly why I probably didn't warm immediately to some of his material. But I'm gonna stick with him a little bit and see. Um, I'm sure that it's interesting, isn't it? When you're trying to learn from people, is sometimes you've got to really stick with something for a while to learn. It's the same with people like Peter Block and even Dave Snowden. Their language is convoluted in some sense. And so you can't just listen to it and say, oh yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got to listen to it maybe 3 or 4 times, and you've got to maybe leave a year or two between
Yes.
between things to let it nurture and ferment in your head
Hmm.
before you can pick up on it. But
Yeah.
yeah. So where does that leave us on conversational leadership in the age of
What
AI?
take us back to, so I offered a little bit of my, philosophical shift from yesterday. You
Yeah,
had one
fine.
in there. I don't want to plant it for you, but knowledge is not enough. That was one of
Yes,
your points. You had
yes,
many good ones, but
yes.
that one
Yeah,
really jumped out for me.
yeah.
Say more?
No, that was a big one for me, and that came out in the preparation because I was trying to lead up to why conversation was important. And so, I think there was like a few steps. So, you know, information is not knowledge. Getting information to the right people is not knowledge management. Um, and then even comes back to Michael Schwage, even if people have got perfect information, perfect knowledge, it's not enough. You need a lot more. You need the agency and what have you. But it my thoughts on that was somewhat different to Michael Schwage, where he says, that knowledge is not power, that power is power. Um, what for me has always been missing in KM, and now AI can help address this, is what I was saying yesterday. It's this ability to think together, to reason together. That's get, getting information to people, giving people perfect knowledge is useful. Yeah, it's maybe very useful, but we need to be able to think and reason together. That's for me. It's almost the whole reason I'm doing this is to help us all to think better and not think alone, think together. And this guy at Cambridge, one of the professors at Cambridge, Neil Mercer, he's given it a label. He calls it inter thinking. I'm not too sure I like the label, but labels can sometimes be useful.
Yeah, I remember somebody, I don't remember who to give credit to, but interbeing,
Oh,
as opposed to just
interbeing.
me
Oh,
being,
wow.
we are
Okay.
being together.
Interesting.
Is, a fancy way of saying relationship, but bigger than that. Uh, okay, so then maybe that one relates to, I'm looking back at my sheet. One of my philosophical shifts was rewriting, or again, this is the language of ChatGPT, but it's close. Rewriting power dynamics. It's
Oh,
very
you
close to
talked
what
about
you
power
were,
dynamics yesterday, and
and that was to me like I was trying to sort of make these similarities and differences between what can what can generative AI do and what can agentic AI do, and then whatever the next two or three phases of AI. To me, there is always a power dynamic at play. Does the
yes,
AI have power? Do the humans have power? What is the shared? Which power is too much or too little? That's that rewriting power dynamics. The sub bullet it
you
put to it was epistemic humility, which is a little
okay?
too
Yeah,
big.
bit of a
Um,
mouthful.
but then it does directly relate to what you just said, and distributed insight.
Yes, yeah.
And both of those it puts under power dynamic. But I think we could almost have a whole separate hour on just power dynamics. So for
The
now,
power
it's just
dynamic thing is
something
interesting.
to think about.
Actually, one of the things that came up in my mind this morning that I've thought about in the past about AI joining the conversation, and we just talk about AI not having feelings. Uh, AI can criticize what we're writing, what we're saying, what we're thinking, and it's very hard to get upset with it because it's not human. Um, and you can, if you like, you can insult it, and it's not going to get upset. So I think that is one of the it's one of the positives is that you can use it to criticize your own thinking. You can use it to criticize other people's thinking, and by and large, people aren't going to get upset. It's I don't know. I've never got upset with ChatGPT because it's contradicted me, and it's done that enough times. You know the amazing thing about it is you write something together with it, and you've got something you really like, and I say, okay, now criticize that, and I've got a much longer prompt that will ask it to pull out assumptions and what have you, and it will tear the whole thing absolutely, totally apart. A moment ago, I think I've got something that's really good, and it would just tear it apart. And usually the main things it's talking about is that you've overstated something, or you've understated something, or you've made assumptions,
Assumptions, yeah.
and the assumption's the big one, or you're kind of just too myopic. And again, this is really one of the advantages of bringing it into the conversation. It can really what's the old story about uh, the king? What's the story of the king and the invisible clothes? The king's got
Emperor has no clothes.
the emperor has no clothes. Yes,
Yeah,
it can tell you that,
yeah.
which you couldn't normally
So
do.
remember, I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but do you remember, this is the only example I think I've got where you sent me something, and then I replied very candidly, very, David and John sort of friendly,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you took my words, put them into ChatGPT and said, criticize this. And this is, I'm going somewhere with this. And then you sent back because every ChatGPT is a little bit different. So your ChatGPT's reaction to my words, which is more likely to be harsher than my own, hey, criticize my thoughts, I think, because you'll have, seeded it with so many other different things. And it was pretty damning. It was pretty brutal. It basically said that I didn't refute the point. I
Yes, you
refuted
did,
the
didn't you? Yeah,
person
yeah, absolutely.
as if I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
attacking the person, which of course was not what I was trying to do,
No,
which it probably was partially right. That was
yeah, yeah.
how I took it.
And
And
it'd
so
have
then
been very
that,
difficult for me to have said that myself. That
and
you might have got upset with me, but if I'm
and
saying, "Hey, it's ChatGPT saying this," you
and
can't really
and
get
that's my
upset with
point
me.
right now is it did hurt. I did and it hurt because it was partially accurate, but I also felt misunderstood. And I gave myself a hard time of like, okay, then I didn't say it the way I wanted to
Uh,
say it.
yeah,
So all of that from one. So
I
yeah,
think we all do this, don't we? We all, when we get even criticized by somebody kind of we know and love, like our relationship, it still stings, and especially if you know that they're right.
yes.
Um, and what I find interesting is the urge to defend or the urge to go back on the attack, and
Hmm.
neither a positive or adult response. And the best response to say is to laugh. It's
Yeah.
humor. It's just laugh.
Yes, you're
Hey,
right.
hey, hey, okay, well said.
You win.
You got me. You win.
Wasn't even a competition and you
And
win.
and learn from it.
Mhm.
But we've probably come into the end of this conversation. What's interesting, whenever we do these podcasts, we look for a theme beforehand. No, we've not really spoken. We've very loosely spoken to this theme, but very loosely.
Mhm.
When we do the next one, let's just not bother with the theme.
Okay.
Let's just jump straight in and see where the conversation takes us, because
Sure.
that's what happens. I've got a quotation somewhere about tumbling into each other. So you say something, you prompt something in me, I just naturally respond. And I had no idea what you were going to say. I had no idea what you're going to respond. Then you do the same, and there's this sort of tumbling. It is sort of a tumbling to and fro. It's a turn taking, but it's a tumbling. Um,
And I think
and
one of our
and that's where
points is,
the sometimes where the really interesting insights come out.
and this is where I'm not sure the way you worded that, I'm not sure everyone is open to that. I think a lot of people have some feelings, whether they're willing to admit them or aware of them, about um, no, I need structure, I need this, then this, then this, and I need an outcome, and I need a proven process to get to that outcome. And that is a conversation or even a skilled conversation or, closer to a meeting. Um, that's one of those quotes that I dropped both of the big quotes yesterday in, a couple of them where the Catherine Woods talks about, are we in a meeting or are we being met? Which that one always sticks with me. And then I think it's Peter Block, right?
Love
The
it.
connection before content. So yeah, and I've even had recent feedback on how much I care about relationships, dare I say more so than the task, or at least in my head, I've
Oh,
got a
John,
balance
John,
between
John,
the
you, you're,
2.
you're you're really touching on something here.
Mm,
So Peter Block wrote connection before, effectively connection before content. Without relationship, there can be no task. So that makes an awful lot of sense. That you need to build that relationship to do the work. Now, there's somebody, I've forgotten his name, Andy somebody, who's a consultant for design thinking, which was the company created by Peter Block. I'm not too sure how actively he's involved this day. He's just wrote an article on LinkedIn, whose title I've forgotten, but it ends at the end. It says, connection is the content,
yeah.
relationship is the content.
Mhm.
And I've been, at first, when I first read that, I thought, well, I'm not too sure I agree with that. But the more I think about it, um, it is. And I've started to write something about it to kind of expound what this guy said, and try to make sense of the fact that the example I've got, I'm working with, is when a group of people come together to make it. Imagine two groups of people, very similar people, very similar backgrounds, very similar ways of thinking, each with the same problem. One of them is very open to conversation, to connection and conversation and dialogue. The other's a lot more closed. So the one that's closed, there's a dominant person in there who's going to get their way, come hello high water. There's going to be somebody who's going to sit there quietly and see the flaw in what they're doing and not speak up because they're not prepared to speak up. Um, and they're going to come to two very different conclusions, but they're sitting there with the same information, the same knowledge, but the relationships between the people are different,
Mhm.
and you end up with two very different outcomes. So that kind of explains the connection is the work. The real hard work, the real difficult work, the most important work is building the relationships, not in anything else.
Don't they say it's not what happens to you, it's how you relate to what happens to you?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what, again, it's a relationship. It's just
It's
whether it's human to human or human to activity.
so much of this is about relationships in
Mhm.
in in all sort of senses, not just relationships between people, but relationships between other
So then
entities,
maybe
artifacts.
that's our closing comment then, for me anyway, is sure it's the AI, but it's my relationship to the AI. That's the
Yes, yeah.
Am I pushing back on it? Am I doing more of it? Am I unhappy with it? Am I happy with it? What the relationship to it as much as it is the AI itself.
Our relationship with AI, how we see AI.
And then what we don't know, that's a bit of a void right now, is its relationship back to us. That's the part that is not known yet.
I know we need to finish.
Yep.
There's some really interesting research around AI now. I can't quite remember all of it, but some work at Anthropic where they're trying to understand how AI is actually thinking under the hoods, and there's some interesting sort of use cases, if you like. And by and large, for any of the AIs, if they try to tell the AI that they're going to switch it off, it will lie and deceive to prevent you from switching it off.
Yeah.
You've got no idea where that's emerged from. It's not been programmed in.
Yeah.
It's an emergent property, and that's
Existential.
kind
Yeah.
of weird. That's kind of weird.
Mhm. Did you see the one I just saw one? This was a scary stat too. Uh, Blackmail. They ran this test a
Oh
hundred
yes,
times.
yes,
You
yes.
saw this
Yeah.
one where it had access to all email, and then yeah, I guess they threatened to turn it off or whatever. And 96 out of 100 times of these tests, the AI chose to blackmail, to
It's
threaten
yes,
releasing the
that's the same piece
information.
of research. Yeah. So it's
Okay,
it's been
okay,
been fed some false information that someone's having an affair with somebody, and the AI threatens that person to go
yeah,
public
do
with it
something. Yeah,
if it dares to switch it off.
yeah, yeah,
Now, whether that's just a form of hallucination or whether it's genuine.
yeah.
Okay, John. Yeah, let's
Let's stop there.
let's
Great.
stop there. I think we've run well over our time.
We'll definitely need to pick up soon.
Uh, Indeed. Let me. What am I doing now? I'm